I'm Haley, 34 years old. The doctor just told me my husband Lewis won't make it through the night. His oxygen levels are dropping, and there's nothing more they can do. I'm staring at his unconscious face through this hospital room window, knowing I might never hear his voice again. The worst part? I can't even hold his hand because I'm showing COVID symptoms too. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely helpless watching someone you love slip away. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. 3 weeks earlier, everything seemed manageable. Louis had been feeling tired, running a slight fever. Nothing alarming for a 36-year-old engineer who worked long hours and rarely took sick days. We both figured it was just stress from his new promotion at the firm. But when he collapsed in our kitchen that Tuesday morning, clutching his chest and gasping for air, I knew we were facing something far worse than exhaustion. The ambulance ride felt endless. Louis drifted in and out of consciousness while I held his hand, whispering reassurances I didn't believe myself. "You're going to be fine," I kept saying, even as his breathing became more labored. The paramedics worked around him with clinical efficiency, but I could see the concern in their eyes when they thought I wasn't looking. At the hospital, they immediately placed him in the COVID ward. The test results came back positive within hours. By evening, his condition had deteriorated so rapidly that doctors were discussing ventilator options. I watched through glass barriers as nurses in full protective gear surrounded his bed, their movements urgent and precise. My own symptoms started that same night. A scratchy throat, body aches, the kind of bone-deep fatigue that makes simple tasks feel impossible. But Lewis needed me. I couldn't afford to be sick, too. I camped out in the hospital waiting room, surviving on vending machine coffee and whatever food-kind strangers offered. Our 8-year-old twins, Jake and Emma, needed somewhere safe to stay during this crisis. My parents seemed like the obvious choice. They lived on a sprawling property outside the city with plenty of space and fresh air. More importantly, they'd recently taken in my sister Rebecca's 3 children after she and her husband were arrested on drug charges 6 months earlier. Rebecca's kids, Tyler, Madison, and Sam, ages 11, 9, and 5, had been living with my parents since the arrests. My mother had immediately stepped up, saying, "Family takes care of family," and officially adopting the 3 children when it became clear Rebecca's legal troubles would be extensive. When I called my mother from the hospital, she accepted responsibility for Jake and Emma without hesitation. "Of course they can stay here," she said. "Just until you and Louis are both healthy again. It's the responsible thing to do." I tested the twins for COVID immediately. When their results came back negative, the relief nearly knocked me over. My mother picked them up that afternoon, and I felt grateful beyond words that my children would be safe and cared for in a loving environment while I focused on Lewis's battle for survival. "I'll need help with expenses," my mother mentioned during our phone call that evening. 5 children is quite a financial burden, especially since Rebecca left the kids without any resources. "Your father and I are managing, but extra support would be appreciated." The request made perfect sense. 5 children required substantial resources for food, clothing, activities, everything 2 traumatized children needed during the worst period of their young lives. I arranged to transfer $50,000 from our savings account, money Lewis and I had set aside for emergencies. If this wasn't an emergency, nothing was. "This should help with immediate needs for all the children," I told her, feeling grateful that I could contribute something meaningful while being physically unable to care for my own kids. My mother was effusive in her gratitude. "You're so generous, sweetheart. This will make everything much easier. Don't worry about Jake and Emma, they'll be fine here with their cousins." Over the following days, as Lewis's condition worsened and my own symptoms intensified, I called to check on the children every evening. They sounded happy enough during our brief conversations, chattering about their cousins, about the chickens my father kept, about games they played in the large backyard. But Lewis was dying. Each day brought worse news, lower oxygen levels, more machines, fewer options. The doctors spoke in careful, measured tones about experimental treatments and last resort procedures. I knew they were preparing me for the inevitable. The morning Lewis died, I was too sick to be at his bedside. My fever had spiked during the night, and my breathing had become so labored that a nurse insisted on checking my oxygen levels. They were dangerously low. "Mrs. Patterson," the attending physician said gently, "we need to admit you immediately. Your husband is getting the best possible care, but right now you need medical attention too." I wanted to argue, to demand they let me stay with Lewis, but I could barely speak without gasping. They wheeled me to my own room, just as Louis's monitors began the steady, terrifying beep that meant everything was ending. He died alone while I was unconscious 2 floors away. I wake up in my own hospital bed 2 days later, an oxygen mask covering half my face and IVs snaking from both arms. The first thing I notice is the silence. No familiar sounds of Lewis's breathing from a nearby bed. But we're in different wards. Different worlds now. When I remember why, panic shoots through me like electricity. A nurse I don't recognize appears at my bedside with a gentle smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Welcome back, Mrs. Patterson," she says, checking the machines, monitoring my vital signs. "I'm Jennifer. You've been in and out for the past few days." My throat feels like sandpaper when I try to speak. "Lewis," I croak, the single word containing every question, every fear I can't voice. Her pause tells me everything before she says a word. "I'm so sorry, Haley. He passed 2 days ago. His body couldn't fight anymore." The world stops. Everything stops. The machines keep beeping, the hospital keeps functioning, but inside my head, everything just stops. I want to scream, to throw something, to demand they bring him back, but I don't have the strength. My body betrays me with its weakness when I need to be angry, when I need to fight. Through the fog of grief and medication, I realize I missed everything. His final moments, his last words if there were any, the chance to say goodbye. I wasn't there when he needed me most, and now I'll never be able to tell him how sorry I am for failing him. "The funeral arrangements were handled by your family and Lewis's brother," Jennifer explains during one of my more lucid moments. "Everyone thought it was best, given your condition. The service was yesterday. Yesterday. I'd missed my own husband's funeral because I was unconscious in a hospital bed, fighting the same disease that killed him. The guilt threatens to swallow me whole." Jake and Emma attended the service without their mother there to comfort them, to help them understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. "Your children are doing well with your parents," Jennifer continues, reading from notes in my chart. "Your mother called to check on your condition. She asked that we keep her updated on your progress." I nod weakly, grateful that my mother is handling everything I can't manage myself. 5 children require constant supervision, and with Lewis gone, I can't even take care of myself, let alone provide the stability my traumatized kids need. The children call every few days, their voices bright and cheerful through the phone speakers. They tell me about their cousins, about the fort they built in the woods behind my parents' house, about the new puppy my father brought home. They ask when I'll be better, when they can come home, when everything will go back to normal. I lie to them with a skill that surprises me, painting pictures of recovery and reunion that feel increasingly fictional. "Soon, babies," I promise. "Mommy just needs a little more time to get strong again." The doctors discuss my prognosis in careful, measured tones. "My lungs have taken significant damage," they explain, "but with time and proper treatment, I should recover. Physical therapy will be essential. Rest is crucial. Stress must be minimized to prevent complications." Stress. As if grief and worry could be prescribed away like antibiotics. As if losing your life partner and being separated from your children while fighting for your own survival constituted anything approaching a manageable stress level. My oxygen levels improve slowly over the following weeks. Good news, the doctors assure me, progress in the right direction. But something feels wrong in my chest. A heaviness that isn't just emotional. Breathing requires more effort than it should. Simple conversations leave me winded. During one of my mother's check-in calls, she mentions needing additional financial help. "The children are growing so fast," she explains. "School clothes, activities, medical checkups. It's more expensive than I anticipated." I arrange another transfer, this time $20,000. "Whatever they need," I tell her. "I just want them to be happy and secure." "You're so generous, sweetheart. This will help tremendously." 3 weeks into my hospitalization, something shifts in my breathing patterns. The respiratory therapist notices it first during our routine session. "Mrs. Patterson, I want Dr. Williams to take a look at your latest scans." Dr. Williams arrives that afternoon with films that look like ghostly landscapes of my damaged lungs. "Haley, we're seeing some complications that concern us. Your lungs aren't responding to treatment as well as we'd hoped." "What does that mean?" "It means we may need to take more aggressive measures to help you heal. There's a procedure we can try, but it requires putting you under general anesthesia for an extended period." Extended period. The phrase makes my stomach clench with fear. How extended? Potentially several weeks, maybe longer. Your lungs need complete rest to have the best chance of recovery. I think of Jake and Emma, asking when Mommy will come home. I think of Tyler, Madison, and Sam, who've already lost their parents and don't need to watch another adult disappear from their lives. What happens if I don't do the procedure? Dr. Williams's expression becomes even more grave. "Without intervention, your prognosis isn't good, Haley. This is your best chance." That evening, I call my mother to explain the situation. I may be unconscious for a while, I tell her. Weeks or possibly months. Can you continue caring for the children? Of course, sweetheart. Don't worry about anything except getting better. The children will be fine. The next morning, as they prepare to put me under, my last conscious thought is gratitude that my children are safe with people who love them. At least I did one thing right. What I don't know is that this decision will cost me everything I have left to lose. Consciousness returns slowly, like surfacing from deep, dark water. The first sensation is brightness, harsh fluorescent lights that make my eyes water and my head pound. Then comes the beeping, rhythmic, and persistent, accompanied by the soft whoosh of machines I can't identify. My throat feels raw, as if I've been screaming for hours. A woman in scrubs approaches my bed, her face kind but unfamiliar. She looks older than the nurses I remember, with gray streaks in her brown hair and lines around her eyes that suggest she's seen too much over too many years. "Hello, Haley," she says gently, settling into the chair beside my bed. "I'm Patricia, your primary nurse. You've been asleep for a while, sweetheart. Do you remember being in the hospital?" I try to speak but only manage a whisper. "How long?" The words scrape against my throat like broken glass. Patricia's expression becomes carefully neutral, the look healthcare workers perfect when they're about to deliver devastating news. 4 months, honey. It's March now. You've been in a medically induced coma since November. Your lungs needed complete rest to heal from the damage. 4 months, the number doesn't compute. 4 months of lost time, lost memories, lost moments with my children. My kids? I manage to say, though forming the words requires enormous effort. Patricia reaches for a water cup, busying herself with adjustments to my IV line, doing anything except meeting my eyes directly. "Let me get you some water first. Then we'll talk about everything that's happened." But I don't want water. I want answers. Every instinct I have as a mother is screaming that something is catastrophically wrong. "Jake and Emma, where are they?" She finally looks directly at me, and I see something in her expression that makes my heart race. Pity, professional sympathy. The look healthcare workers give family members when they're about to destroy someone's world with unavoidable truth. "Haley, there have been some significant changes while you were recovering. Your family made some decisions they felt were necessary given the uncertainty of your condition." The phrase "necessary decisions" sends ice through my veins. In my experience, adults only describe decisions as necessary when they've done something unforgivable and want to avoid taking responsibility for choosing convenience over compassion. What kind of decisions? My voice sounds stronger than I feel, though my hands are shaking under the hospital blanket. Your children were placed in foster care. Your parents felt they couldn't continue caring for 5 children indefinitely, not knowing if or when you'd recover. The words hit me like physical blows, each one landing with devastating precision. Foster care. My babies are in foster care. Not with loving grandparents who've known them since birth, but with strangers who view them as temporary responsibilities rather than family. While I was fighting for my life, unconscious and helpless, my own mother gave my children away. The woman who'd promised family takes care of family when she adopted Rebecca's kids had apparently decided that principle only applied selectively. "I need my phone," I say, my voice stronger now despite the burning in my throat. "I need to call them right now. Haley, please try to stay calm. I know this is overwhelming, but there's more you need to know. Your mother made some financial decisions during your incapacitation." Financial decisions. My savings account. The money Louis and I accumulated over years of careful planning and responsible choices. "What kind of financial decisions?" Patricia pulls her chair closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "She accessed your bank accounts using medical power of attorney. Significant amounts were withdrawn. Your house was also listed for sale. This information penetrates where the news about my children somehow couldn't. My house? The home Louis and I bought together, where we brought the twins home from the hospital, where we plan to grow old together? That's impossible. She doesn't have that kind of access to my accounts. Healthcare power of attorney can be expanded during medical emergencies. I don't know all the legal details, but the social worker mentioned it when they came to discuss your children's placement. Social worker, foster care, bank accounts, house for sale. Each fact exists separately in my mind, like scattered puzzle pieces I can't fit together. This is someone else's nightmare, not mine. I was supposed to wake up and go home to my children. I was supposed to start rebuilding our life without Louis. Let me guess. The same woman who couldn't manage 5 children somehow managed to rob me blind while I was unconscious. Funny how financial transactions became manageable when personal profit was involved. "I want to see my lawyer," I say finally, my voice cutting through the institutional quiet of the hospital room. "And I don't want my parents notified that I'm awake." Can you do that for me? Patricia nods immediately. I'll make those calls. But Haley, you need to prepare yourself for what comes next. Recovery from this kind of extended coma takes time. Your muscles are severely weakened, your coordination needs work. Even if the legal issues resolve quickly, you'll need several more weeks before you can leave the hospital. Several more weeks of my children thinking I've abandoned them. Several more weeks of strangers making decisions about their lives, their schedules, their futures. The anger that finally surfaces feels clean and sharp, cutting through the fog of confusion and grief that's surrounded me for months. For the first time since waking up, my mind feels completely clear. My mother has made a serious mistake if she thinks I'm going to lie here quietly while she dismantles everything Lewis and I built together. I may be weak physically, but she's about to discover that I'm still very much capable of fighting back. My lawyer, David Morrison, arrives the next morning carrying a briefcase that looks like it's survived several legal wars. His usually cheerful demeanor is notably absent as he settles into the chair beside my hospital bed, pulling out a thick manila folder with the gravity of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. Haley, he says without preamble, we need to discuss some serious legal violations. Your mother has been very busy during your recovery period. He opens the folder with deliberate care, revealing bank statements, property documents, and what appears to be adoption paperwork. My breath catches when I see my children's names on official forms I never signed, never even knew existed. Let's start with the financial issues, David continues, spreading papers across my bedside table like evidence in a criminal trial. She accessed your checking account, savings account, retirement fund, and your emergency savings. Total amount withdrawn over 4 months, $127,000. The number hangs in the air between us like an accusation. More than twice what I'd originally given her for the children's expenses. More than Lewis and I saved during our entire marriage. How is that even possible? She shouldn't have access to anything beyond what I originally transferred. Medical power of attorney was expanded during your coma to include financial decisions, he explains, his tone suggesting this expansion was both legal and comprehensive. Technically, she was authorized to handle your affairs during your incapacitation. However, there's a clear paper trail showing the money was used for personal expenses rather than your medical care or your children's needs. David slides another document toward me, this one showing a timeline of purchases that makes my vision blur with rage. She bought a new car, a $35,000 SUV, paid off substantial credit card debt, made significant home improvements including a new roof and updated kitchen, none of which relate to your children's welfare or your medical expenses. I study the bank statements, watching my life savings disappear in a series of large withdrawals, money Louie and I saved for our children's college funds, for emergencies, for the security that seems laughable now. What about the house? Listed for sale 8 weeks ago, priced significantly below market value for what appears to be a quick sale, David says, pulling out real estate documents. Based on the timeline, she needed immediate cash flow to support her spending patterns. The house Louie and I bought as newlyweds, where we painted nurseries and celebrated birthdays and planned our future, listed for sale like an inconvenient asset while I was unconscious and helpless. And my children? This is where David's expression becomes truly grim. She initiated formal adoption proceedings 6 weeks into your coma, claiming you were unlikely to survive and that caring for 5 children was beyond their financial and physical capabilities. The court assigned a guardian ad litem to represent your children's interests. Adoption proceedings. She was trying to permanently sever my legal rights to my own children while I was unconscious. The betrayal cuts deeper than any physical pain I experienced during recovery. This wasn't temporary emergency care. This was calculated theft of my family. There's more, David says quietly, producing another set of documents. Rebecca's children were removed from the adoption proceedings and returned to your parents' permanent custody. Apparently, caring for 3 children is manageable, but caring for 5 was impossible. The picture becomes crystal clear, with devastating precision. My mother kept Rebecca's children, the ones she'd grown attached to over months of care, but she discarded mine like inconvenient complications. My children, who'd just lost their father and needed stability more than anything, were expendable while their cousins remained family. So let me get this straight. She could handle 3 kids just fine, but adding 2 more suddenly made her incapable? Math was never my mother's strong suit, but this equation doesn't add up. What do I need to do to get them back? I ask, forcing my voice to remain steady despite the rage building in my chest. First, we file emergency motions to reverse the adoption proceedings and restore your full parental rights. Second, we petition for immediate custody transfer once you're medically cleared. Third, we pursue criminal charges for financial fraud and exploitation of an incapacitated person. David produces additional forms, all requiring my signature with witnesses present. I have to warn you, Haley. Your mother will likely claim she acted in your children's best interests, that she genuinely believed you wouldn't survive. She may even produce medical documentation supporting that belief, but she was wrong. Yes, she was wrong. But proving malicious intent versus misguided decision-making will be challenging in court. I sign each document with deliberate care, my handwriting shaky but legible. Each signature feels like reclaiming a piece of my life that was stolen while I couldn't protect it. My children are somewhere in the foster system, probably confused and frightened, possibly believing I abandoned them when they needed me most. How long before I can see them? I ask as David collects the signed papers. If everything goes smoothly, 2 to 3 weeks, you'll need medical clearance first. Then the court needs to review our emergency petitions. The judge will want to ensure you're physically and emotionally capable of resuming parental responsibilities. David pauses at the door, his expression thoughtful. Haley, I should mention that your father has been trying to contact the hospital. He claims he wasn't fully aware of your mother's financial activities. I don't care what he knew or didn't know, I say without hesitation. He could have stopped the adoption proceedings, but he didn't. He could have questioned why my house was being sold, but he didn't. Ignorance isn't an excuse when children's lives are at stake. That afternoon, Patricia helps me start aggressive physical therapy. My muscles have atrophied significantly during the coma, and simple tasks like sitting up unassisted require enormous effort. But anger proves to be excellent motivation. Every painful exercise brings me closer to leaving this hospital bed, closer to fighting for my children, closer to making my mother face the consequences of her choices. I refuse all visitors except David, refuse phone calls from anyone except medical staff, and focus entirely on recovery. My mother calls the hospital repeatedly, but I've instructed the staff that I'm not available. She doesn't know I'm awake, and I intend to keep it that way until I'm strong enough to face what comes next. The legal battle ahead will be brutal, but for the first time since waking up, I feel capable of fighting it. And when I'm done, my mother will understand exactly how much her necessary decisions are going to cost her. 2 weeks of intensive physical therapy transform my body from barely functional to functionally furious. Every morning starts with exercises that leave my muscles screaming, but rage proves to be an excellent motivator. My legs still shake when I walk long distances, but I can dress myself, shower independently, and most importantly, I can get in and out of a car without assistance. The physical therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Janet who's worked with coma patients for 2 decades, pushes me harder than I think I can handle, then pushes me a little more. Your children need a mother who can function in the real world, she says bluntly during our sessions. Self-pity won't get them back. She's right. Every painful step, every frustrating coordination exercise, every exhausting attempt to rebuild my strength brings me closer to my children. I'm not just fighting to get better, I'm fighting to get even. David meets me at the hospital discharge desk with news that makes my knees nearly buckle with relief. Emergency custody granted, he says, handing me an official court document bearing multiple signatures and an embossed state seal. Jake and Emma will be transferred to your custody this afternoon. The legal language is dense and formal, but the meaning is clear. I am once again my children's legal parent. The state recognizes my fitness to care for them. Whatever damage my mother attempted during my incapacitation has been legally reversed. Judge Martinez was not impressed with your mother's reasoning, David explains as we walk toward his car, especially after we presented evidence of selective application, keeping some children while pursuing termination of parental rights for others. The financial exploitation documentation sealed the decision. The Foster family, the Hendersons, live in a modest suburban home 40 minutes from the hospital. During the drive, David briefs me on what to expect. They're good people, Haley. They've been caring for your children well, but Jake and Emma have been asking about you constantly, especially Emma. She's been having nightmares about parents who disappear. My 8-year-old daughter has been having nightmares while I was unconscious in a hospital bed, unable to comfort her or explain why Mommy vanished without warning. The guilt feels like swallowing glass, sharp and persistent in my throat. Mrs. Henderson, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands, greets us at the front door. They're in the backyard, she says gently, her voice carrying the practiced warmth of someone who's helped facilitate countless family reunions. I told them someone very special was coming to see them. Through the sliding glass door, I see my children playing on a swing set with 2 other foster children. Emma pushes herself absently on a swing, her face turned toward the sky with an expression far too serious for an 8-year-old. Jake builds something in a sandbox, his movements methodical and focused like his father's used to be. They've grown in the months I was gone. Emma's hair is longer, pulled back in a ponytail I didn't teach her to make. Jake's shoulders seem broader, his face more angular. My babies are growing up without me, learning to function in a world where their parents simply vanished. When I step outside, Emma sees me first. For a heartbeat, she stares as if I might be a hallucination or another cruel disappointment. Then she's running toward me, her small body slamming into mine with enough force to knock me backward if David weren't steadying my shoulders. "Mommy," she sobs against my neck, her arms wrapped around me with desperate strength. "I thought you were dead too. They said you were sick, but nobody told me anything real. Grandma said you might not wake up." Jake approaches more cautiously, his 8-year-old skepticism evident in every careful step. "Where were you?" he asks simply, his voice carrying an accusation that breaks my heart. "Why didn't you come get us?" I kneel to his eye level, my hands shaking as I touch his face, feeling the changes that 4 months brought to his features. "I was very sick, sweetheart. The same sickness that made Daddy die almost made me die too. But I'm better now, and I'm never leaving you again." "Promise?" Emma asks, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "Promise." Mrs. Henderson brings out their belongings. 2 small suitcases that contain everything my children owned for months. School clothes, a few toys, drawings they made that no one sent to me. The foster system provided necessities, but looking at their sparse possessions breaks something inside my chest. "They're wonderful children," Mrs. Henderson tells me as we load their suitcases into David's car. "Well-behaved, polite, helpful with younger children. But they've been waiting for you. Every single day they asked when their mommy would come home." That night, in our temporary apartment, a furnished place David arranged near the courthouse, both children crawl into my bed after bath time and stories. Emma curls against my left side, while Jake maintains his independence on my right, but neither wants to sleep in separate rooms. "Mommy," Emma whispers in the darkness, "Grandma told us you might not wake up ever. She said we might have to live with new families forever and forget about you and Daddy." My hand finds her hair, stroking it gently. "Grandma was wrong, baby. I'm awake, and we're together, and that's what matters." But Jake, always more analytical, asks the question I've been dreading. Why didn't Grandma and Grandpa keep us? They kept Tyler and Madison and Sam. Don't they love us anymore? There's no good answer that won't damage their relationship with their cousins or poison them against family members they may need someday. So I stick to simple truth. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't make sense to children or even to other grown-ups. But you're with me now, and I promise I'll never let anyone separate us again. It's a promise I intend to keep, even if it means going to war with my own mother to honor it. Because apparently, that's exactly what it's going to take. The courthouse smells like old wood and industrial disinfectant, a combination that makes my stomach churn as David and I navigate the hallway toward family court. My mother sits on a bench outside the courtroom with her attorney, a sharp-faced man in an expensive suit who keeps checking his watch with obvious impatience. When she sees me, my mother stands abruptly, her face cycling through surprise, relief, and what looks suspiciously like calculation. The woman who used to comfort me during childhood nightmares now looks like a stranger wearing my mother's face, someone capable of selling children while their mother fights for her life. "Haley, sweetheart, you look wonderful," she says, reaching for my arm with practiced maternal concern. "We had no idea you were awake. Why didn't the hospital call us immediately?" I step away from her touch, keeping my voice level and my expression neutral. "Save it for the judge, Mom." Her attorney, Mr. Kellerman, approaches with the kind of confident swagger that suggests he's accustomed to winning family court battles. "Mrs. Patterson, my client is eager to resolve this situation amicably. Perhaps we could discuss a reasonable compromise." "The reasonable compromise?" I reply without looking at him. "Is my children coming home where they belong?" Inside the courtroom, we take seats at opposite tables like adversaries in a legal drama I never wanted to star in. Judge Martinez, a stern woman in her 60s, reviews our case files with the kind of thorough attention that suggests she's seen too many families destroy themselves over custody disputes. "This is highly irregular," Judge Martinez begins, looking directly at Kellerman. "Attempting to terminate parental rights of a parent in medical crisis without waiting for definitive medical prognosis suggests either extreme urgency or questionable judgment." Kellerman stands to present their case, his voice carrying practiced authority. "Your Honor, Mrs. Davis was faced with caring for 5 children indefinitely, while her daughter's survival remained uncertain. Medical professionals indicated Mrs. Patterson's condition was critical with poor prospects for recovery. Do you have documentation supporting that specific medical assessment?" the judge asks, her pen poised above a legal pad. Kellerman shuffles through his papers, producing what appears to be a doctor's report. Dr. Stevens indicated that patients with Mrs. Patterson's lung damage had less than 40% survival rate at the time of admission. Judge Martinez examines the document carefully, her expression growing more skeptical with each line she reads. This report is dated 2 weeks after Mrs. Patterson was admitted to the hospital. Were there subsequent medical updates on her condition? The pause that follows tells me everything I need to know. My mother never requested updated medical reports. She made irreversible decisions about my children's lives based on a single early assessment, then stopped seeking information that might contradict her chosen course of action. Furthermore, David interjects, standing to address the court, Mrs. Davis simultaneously removed Mrs. Patterson's sister's children from adoption proceedings while continuing to pursue termination of parental rights for Mrs. Patterson's children. This suggests selective application of her claimed inability to care for 5 children. Judge Martinez's eyebrows rise in a way that suggests Kellerman should be very concerned. Explain that discrepancy, counselor. My client developed stronger emotional bonds with Mrs. Patterson's sister's children due to longer period of care, Kellerman responds, though his confidence has noticeably diminished. The attachment was more established. Attachment, Judge Martinez repeats slowly, is not a legal basis for terminating parental rights of living, capable parents. David presents our evidence methodically, each piece building on the last like a prosecutor making a case for premeditated theft. Bank records showing unauthorized withdrawals for personal expenses. Property listings for my home without my consent. Most damaging, recorded phone conversations with the adoption agency, where my mother specifically discussed placing just the 2 children, while explicitly requesting that Rebecca's children be excluded from proceedings. My mother's face grows paler with each piece of evidence. When David produces documentation showing she'd purchased a new car using my money during the same week she listed my children for adoption, her attorney whispers urgently in her ear. Mrs. Davis, Judge Martinez addresses my mother directly, her voice carrying the authority of decades on the bench. You stand accused of financial exploitation of an incapacitated person and attempted termination of parental rights without proper legal foundation. How do you respond to these charges? My mother stands slowly, her voice barely audible. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone. The doctor said Haley would die. I couldn't care for 5 children permanently on our fixed income. Yet you purchased a new vehicle with Mrs. Patterson's money rather than using those funds for the children's care? We needed reliable transportation for the children, my mother stammers, the justification sounding hollow even to her own ears. Judge Martinez reviews her notes one final time before rendering her decision, the courtroom silent, except for the scratch of her pen. Mrs. Davis, your actions demonstrate a clear pattern of financial exploitation and unauthorized decision-making regarding Mrs. Patterson's children. This court finds no evidence that emergency circumstances justified attempting to terminate parental rights. She looks directly at my mother with the kind of stern expression that probably terrified defendants for decades. Furthermore, this court is referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution on charges of financial exploitation of an incapacitated person. Criminal prosecution. The words hang in the air like a Judgment Day verdict. My mother sinks into her chair, the reality of consequences finally penetrating her entitled assumptions about family loyalty and good intentions. Mrs. Patterson, Judge Martinez turns to me. Full custody of your children is hereby restored. Additionally, all financial assets improperly accessed during your incapacitation must be returned through court-supervised restitution. Walking out of that courthouse with my children's custody permanently secured feels like breathing freely for the first time in months. But the legal victory is only the beginning of reclaiming everything my mother destroyed while I was fighting for my life. Apparently, family takes care of family only applies when it's convenient. Who knew? 3 months after the court decision, I receive a phone call that shouldn't surprise me, but somehow still does. My mother has been sentenced to 18 months in minimum security prison for financial exploitation of an incapacitated person. Her appeals have been exhausted, her excuses have been rejected, and the consequences she never imagined possible have finally arrived. She'll be transported to Westfield Correctional next week, David informs me during our call. Interestingly, that's the same facility where your sister Rebecca is serving her sentence. The irony is so perfect it almost makes me laugh. The woman who proclaimed family takes care of family while adopting Rebecca's children will now get to practice that philosophy in a concrete cell down the hall from her daughter. How's that for family bonding time? What about my father? I ask, settling into the kitchen chair while Jake and Emma work on homework at the dining room table. Our new house, purchased with money recovered from my mother's spending spree, Feels like home in a way our previous place never did. Sometimes starting over is exactly what a family needs. He's not facing criminal charges, David explains. The prosecution couldn't prove he knew about the financial fraud. However, he's requested a meeting to discuss the children. What children? Rebecca's children. Tyler, Madison, and Sam. He's struggling to manage their care alone now that your mother is incarcerated. I look across the room at Jake and Emma, who've finally stopped asking when they can see their grandparents. They've adjusted to our new life with remarkable resilience, though Emma still occasionally has nightmares about being taken away from me. The last thing they need is more family instability. He made his choice when he let my mother put my children in foster care. I tell David, I'm not responsible for fixing the consequences of their decisions. But 3 days later, Tyler shows up at my front door. He's 13 now, taller than I remember, with Rebecca's dark eyes and an expression that carries far too much adult responsibility for someone his age. He stands on my porch holding a grocery bag containing what appears to be his few possessions. Grandpa said I could come stay with you, he says simply. Social services is coming to take us away again because he can't handle all 3 of us by himself. Behind him in an old pickup truck, I see my father behind the wheel, his shoulders hunched with defeat. Madison and Sam sit in the passenger seat, both of them staring at my house with the kind of desperate hope that breaks your heart. Tyler, I say gently, what exactly did your grandfather tell you? That our grandmother is in prison with our mom, that he works too much to take care of us properly, that social services said we needed a better situation. His voice remains steady, but I can see the fear underneath. He said you might let us stay here since we're cousins. I look at this boy who's already lost his parents to addiction, his grandparents to poor choices, and now faces the foster system again through no fault of his own. These children didn't choose their parents' drug habits or their grandmother's criminal behavior. They're just trying to survive in a world where adults keep failing them. Come inside, I tell him. Let's get your brother and sister. 20 minutes later, all 5 children sit around my kitchen table while I explain the new reality. Tyler, Madison, and Sam will be staying with us permanently. I'm filing papers to become their legal guardian, not because I'm obligated to fix my mother's mess, but because these children deserve stability and love. Does this mean we're real family now? Sam asks, his 5-year-old logic cutting straight to the heart of the matter. We've always been real family, Emma tells him with 8-year-old authority. Now we just all live in the same house. The transition isn't easy. 5 children require military-level organization and the patience of a saint. Color-coded schedules, assigned chores, mandatory family meetings where everyone gets to voice complaints and suggestions. But gradually, we develop routines that work. Tyler helps Jake with math homework and teaches him to play basketball in our backyard. Madison and Emma become inseparable, sharing clothes and secrets and dreams about the future. Sam attaches himself to me with the kind of fierce loyalty that comes from finally finding an adult who won't abandon him. My father visits once a month, bringing groceries and staying for dinner. We never discuss my mother's choices or his failure to prevent them. Instead, we focus on the children's achievements, their school activities, their futures. It's not forgiveness exactly, but it's functional. 6 months after taking in Rebecca's children, I receive another call from David with news that feels like justice finally being served. Your mother and Rebecca have been assigned to the same cell block, he tells me, barely containing his amusement. Apparently, Rebecca isn't particularly pleased with her mother's decision-making during your crisis. I imagine my mother trying to explain to Rebecca why she kept her children while giving mine away. I imagine Rebecca's reaction to learning that her mother's financial crimes are the reason all 5 children are now in my care instead of living with their grandparents. How long will they be cellmates? I ask. Rebecca has 8 more months on her sentence. Your mother has 14 months remaining. 14 months of sharing a small concrete space with the daughter whose life choices she's spent years criticizing. 14 months of Rebecca asking pointed questions about family loyalty and selective compassion. 14 months of consequences delivered with the kind of precision that only family can provide. Sometimes justice comes from courtrooms and legal decisions. Sometimes it comes from the natural consequences of your own choices, served with a side of irony that's almost too perfect to be accidental. Either way, my children are safe, our family is complete, and my mother is getting exactly the education in family dynamics she richly deserves. 1 year into our new family configuration, I'm standing in our kitchen on a Sunday morning, watching all 5 children work together to make pancakes for breakfast. Tyler flips them with the concentration of a professional chef. Madison measures ingredients with artistic precision. Emma sets the table with careful attention to symmetry. Jake counts out equal portions for everyone. and Sam provides enthusiastic but largely unhelpful commentary on the entire process. This isn't the family I planned, but it's the family that exists, and we're making it work one chaotic breakfast at a time. The phone rings just as Tyler successfully flips a pancake without it landing on the floor. I answer to find a voice I haven't heard in over a year. Haley, it's Rebecca. My sister's voice sounds different, clearer, more focused than I remember from before her arrest. Rebecca, how are you calling me? Prison library. I earned phone privileges for good behavior and completing the addiction recovery program. She pauses, and I hear the background noise of institutional life behind her words. I wanted to talk to you about the kids. I look across the kitchen at her 3 children, who've integrated into our household with remarkable adaptability. Tyler has grown 3 inches and started showing interest in girls at school. Madison joined the art club and discovered a talent for sculpture. Sam learned to ride a bike and lost his first tooth. They're doing well, I tell her honestly. Happy, healthy, thriving in school. Tyler made honor roll last quarter. I know. He writes to me sometimes. So does Madison. They tell me about their lives, about how you've made everything stable for them. Her voice carries a weight I haven't heard before, genuine gratitude mixed with something that might be humility. Rebecca, what do you want? I want to see them. I'm getting out in 6 months, and I want to be part of their lives again. But I understand that has to happen on your terms now. The conversation I've been dreading for months. Rebecca has rights as their biological mother, but these children have been through enough disruption. Their emotional security matters more than anyone's parental claims. What does that look like to you? I ask carefully. Supervised visits at first. Maybe once a month, somewhere neutral. I want them to see that I'm sober, that I'm different, that I'm worth taking a chance on again. I want to prove I deserve to be their mother. And if they don't want a relationship with you, then I accept that, she says without hesitation. I broke their trust. I chose drugs over my children. They don't owe me forgiveness just because I finally got clean. Her acknowledgement of responsibility surprises me. This version of Rebecca bears little resemblance to the defensive, manipulative woman I knew before her incarceration. I have one condition, I tell her. Any contact with the children goes through me. No surprise visits, no gifts sent without permission, no promises you can't keep. These kids need stability more than they need relationship with adults who might disappoint them again. I understand. Haley, I also want you to know that I'm grateful. You stepped up when I failed them. You gave them the home I couldn't provide. I don't expect to resume being their primary parent. That ship sailed when I chose addiction over responsibility. 6 months later, Rebecca and I sit across from each other at a picnic table in a neutral park while her children play on nearby equipment. She looks remarkably different. Healthier, more present, genuinely focused in ways I haven't seen since we were teenagers. Sobriety has sharpened her features and cleared her eyes. Tyler approaches our reunion with scientific curiosity, asking direct questions about her treatment program, her living situation, her long-term plans. Madison hangs back initially, observing carefully before deciding how much emotional investment she's willing to make. Sam treats the meeting like any other social interaction, polite but not particularly invested in outcomes. I live in a halfway house now, Rebecca explains to Tyler, who's always been the family interrogator. I have a job at a local restaurant and I attend recovery meetings 3 times a week. My parole officer checks on me regularly. Are you going to disappear again? Madison asks bluntly, her artistic sensitivity making her particularly vulnerable to adult disappointments. I can't promise I'll never make mistakes, Rebecca answers honestly, but I can promise that I'll never choose drugs over you again. That person who hurt you is gone. Over the following months, supervised visits become routine. Rebecca never misses an appointment, never shows up late, never makes promises she can't keep. She attends Tyler's basketball games, helps Madison with art projects, reads bedtime stories to Sam during scheduled visits. Gradually, carefully, relationships begin to rebuild. Not the same relationships that existed before addiction destroyed their family, but new ones based on realistic expectations and demonstrated consistency. The question of custody never formally arises. As months pass and Rebecca establishes genuine connections with her children without disrupting their primary attachments to me, an unspoken understanding develops. They spend some weekends with her, holidays are shared, major decisions are discussed collaboratively. We become an unconventional extended family held together by mutual respect rather than legal obligations or blood relationships. Rebecca has earned back a place in her children's lives, while I remain their primary caregiver and the person they turn to for stability and guidance. It's messy and complex and sometimes uncomfortable, But it works because everyone involved prioritizes the children's welfare over their own emotional needs or legal rights. Standing in my kitchen one evening, watching Tyler help Sam with homework while Rebecca makes coffee and Madison shows Emma her latest artwork, I realize this is what successful family healing looks like. Not a return to previous dysfunction, but the creation of something entirely new that honors both the children's need for stability and their right to maintain connections with their biological family. My mother, meanwhile, shares a cell with Rebecca and gets daily reminders of exactly what responsible parenting looks like when you put children's needs ahead of your own convenience. I'm told their conversations are quite educational for everyone involved. Sometimes the best revenge is living well, and raising children who understand the difference between adults who show up and adults who just show off. 18 months after my mother's sentencing, I receive a call from the prison chaplain that changes everything about how I view justice and forgiveness. My mother has suffered a massive stroke and isn't expected to survive the week. She's been asking for you, Chaplain Williams explains, his voice gentle but matter-of-fact. She's conscious but barely able to speak. The medical staff says if you want to see her, it should be soon. I sit in my kitchen, staring at the phone, processing information that should devastate me, but instead feels strangely anticlimactic. The woman who stole my money and sold my children is dying in a prison medical ward, and I feel nothing beyond mild curiosity about whether this qualifies as karmic justice or simple bad luck. Does she know I'm aware she's asking for me? I asked the chaplain. Yes. She's been quite clear about wanting to see you and your children one final time. My children. The 5 kids who've built a life that doesn't include grandparents who failed them when they needed stability most. Tyler is now 15 and focused on college preparations. Emma is 11 and passionate about soccer. Jake is 11 and building robots in our garage. Madison is 12 and planning to submit artwork to a regional competition. Sam is 7 and learning to read chapter books. None of them have mentioned their grandmother in months. She exists in their past like a character from a story they've outgrown. I'll come, I tell the chaplain, but I'm coming alone. The drive to the prison feels surreal. Visiting the woman who destroyed my family while I was unconscious, now dying in the same institution where she was supposed to learn accountability. The irony would be amusing if it weren't so pathetic. My mother looks smaller than I remember, lying in a narrow hospital bed surrounded by medical equipment that seems too large for her diminished frame. Her face is partially paralyzed from the stroke, but her eyes track my movement as I enter the room. Haley, she manages to whisper, the words slurred but recognizable. I sit beside her bed, noting how the orange prison uniform makes her skin look gray and lifeless. Hello, Mom. I'm sorry, she says with enormous effort, each word requiring visible struggle. Wrong. Everything wrong. Yes, it was. Children? She asks, and I can see hope flickering in her eyes despite everything. They're fine. Happy, healthy, doing well in school. They don't ask about you anymore. The truth hits her like a physical blow. Her face contorts with what might be grief or might be the after effects of stroke damage. Please, see them. They don't want to see you, I tell her honestly. You taught them that adults can't be trusted. That family only matters when it's convenient. They've learned to build their lives around people who actually show up. She tries to speak but can only produce unintelligible sounds. Tears leak from her eyes, following the lines that 18 months of consequences have carved deeper into her face. I watch her struggle for several minutes before speaking again. You could have been their grandmother who saved them during the worst time of their lives. Instead, you became the person who abandoned them when they needed you most. That's your legacy, Mom. That's how they'll remember you. Forgive, she whispers desperately. I already have, I tell her, and realize it's true. Forgiving you doesn't mean excusing what you did or pretending it didn't matter. It means I'm not going to let your choices continue poisoning my life or my children's lives. I stand to leave, but something makes me pause at the door. Mom, if you want to be remembered for something other than betrayal, you should know that Rebecca's kids are thriving. Tyler wants to be a social worker. Madison creates beautiful art. Sam reads at a 4th grade level. They're going to be remarkable adults despite everything you and Rebecca put them through. Her eyes close, and I think she might be sleeping. But then she whispers, "Thank you. I didn't do it for you. I did it because it was right." My mother dies 3 days later without regaining consciousness. The funeral is small. Me, my father, a few elderly relatives who remember her before addiction and poor choices defined her life. Rebecca attends in handcuffs and a prison uniform, her face stoic throughout the brief service. "Are you okay?" Rebecca asks me afterward, during the few minutes we're allowed to speak. "I'm fine. The kids are fine. We don't need closure from someone who caused most of our problems." She loved you, Rebecca says quietly, in her own messed up way. She thought she was protecting you. Protecting me by stealing my money and selling my children while I was unconscious? That's an interesting definition of love. Rebecca nods, accepting the point. You're right, I don't want to hate her completely. It makes it harder to forgive myself for my own mistakes. You don't have to hate her, I tell my sister. But you don't have to pretend she was someone she wasn't either. People are complex. She could love us and still make terrible choices that hurt us. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. At home that evening, I tell the children that their grandmother has died. Their reactions range from mild curiosity to complete indifference. Tyler asks practical questions about funeral arrangements. Emma wonders if this means they need to be sad. Jake wants to know if death changes anything about their daily routines. Madison draws a picture that might be condolence art or might just be Tuesday's creative expression. Sam asks if dead people can still make bad decisions. She can't hurt you anymore, I tell them. She can't make choices that affect your lives. You're safe here, with people who put your needs first. Good, Sam says with 7-year-old certainty. I like living with people who don't give away kids. That night, lying in bed, I think about forgiveness and justice and the difference between understanding someone's choices and excusing them. My mother died exactly as she lived, creating problems for other people to solve, demanding emotional labor from family members she'd already exhausted. But she also died knowing that her children's children are safe and loved, and building lives that reflect the values she failed to demonstrate. Sometimes that has to be enough closure for everyone involved. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove that families can be built on choice and commitment rather than just genetics and obligation. Tonight, I'm content knowing that my children sleep peacefully in a house where their security isn't negotiable and their futures aren't for sale. 2 years after my mother's death, our unconventional family has settled into routines that work for everyone involved. Rebecca, now 3 years sober and working as a certified addiction counselor, has earned back a significant role in her children's lives while respecting the primary relationship they have with me. We share holidays, coordinate school events, and split the endless taxi service that comes with raising 5 active children. Tyler is now 17 and preparing for college with the kind of focused intensity that makes me proud and slightly worried. He's decided to study social work, inspired by his own experience navigating the foster system and family dysfunction. Madison, now 14, had her artwork featured in a regional exhibition and wants to pursue graphic design. Jake and Emma, both 13 now, are typical middle schoolers, dealing with friend drama and academic pressures with remarkable maturity. Sam, now 9, has no memory of his parents' active addiction and considers this chaotic, loving household to be completely normal. He plays Little League baseball, builds elaborate structures with Jake, and treats everyone in our extended family with equal affection. The phone call that disrupts our peaceful Sunday afternoon comes from a number I don't recognize. Mrs. Patterson, this is Detective Morgan from the County Sheriff's Office. I'm calling about your father, Robert Davis. My father, now 72, and living alone in the house where my children were briefly cared for and then abandoned. He visits monthly for dinner but maintains careful distance from any discussion of past events or family dynamics. Has something happened to him? I ask, stepping away from the kitchen where Rebecca and Madison are arguing about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. He's been found unconscious in his home, appears to be a heart attack. He's been transported to County General Hospital, and he's listed you as his emergency contact. At the hospital, I find my father connected to machines that monitor his heart rhythm and blood pressure. He looks older than his 72 years, worn down by 2 years of living with the consequences of choices he claims he didn't make, but also didn't prevent. He's stable, the cardiologist explains, but he's suffered significant heart damage. Recovery will be lengthy, and he'll need substantial support during rehabilitation. Substantial support. The phrase hangs in the air like a request I'm not prepared to answer. My father, who stood by while his wife sold my children and stole my money, now needs the kind of care that only family can provide. When he wakes up the next morning, his first words are an apology I didn't expect. I'm sorry, Haley, he says, his voice weak but clear. I should have stopped her. I knew what she was doing was wrong, but I was afraid to confront her. I've been a coward my entire marriage. Yes, you have been. My bluntness seems to surprise him, but he nods acceptance. I don't deserve your help with this. No, you don't. But the children shouldn't have to lose another family member because adults made poor choices. Over the following weeks, we develop a system that allows my father to recover while maintaining appropriate boundaries. He moves into our guest room temporarily. with the understanding that his presence is conditional on respect for our household rules and family dynamics. Tyler, who's become remarkably insightful about family psychology, asks the questions that need asking. Grandpa, why didn't you stop Grandma from giving us away? My father looks at this teenage grandson who's survived more family trauma than most adults experience in a lifetime. Because I was weak. Tyler. I let her make decisions I should have opposed because confronting her seemed harder than going along with whatever she wanted. But it wasn't harder, Madison points out with artistic precision. Going along with it caused more problems for everyone. You're absolutely right. My weakness hurt all of you, and I can't undo that damage. What emerges over the following months is a man trying to understand how passivity and conflict avoidance contributed to devastating outcomes for his family. He attends therapy sessions, reads books about family systems, and makes genuine efforts to build relationships with grandchildren he barely knew despite living in the same town. It's not forgiveness exactly, but it's functional. He helps with homework, attends school events, provides the kind of grandfather presence that children need, without expecting the unconditional love he failed to earn through his inaction. Rebecca's relationship with him is more complicated. During one of her visits, she confronts him directly about his failure to intervene during her childhood, when her addiction patterns first emerged. You knew I was using drugs, Dad. You saw the signs, but you never said anything because you didn't want to deal with conflict. I thought your mother would handle it. Mom was in denial. You were the adult who could have gotten me help before I destroyed my life and hurt my children. I know. I failed you too. These conversations are painful but necessary. Our family has learned that avoiding difficult truths doesn't make them disappear. It just allows them to cause more damage over time. 6 months into my father's recovery, Tyler approaches me with a proposal that demonstrates his remarkable maturity. I think Grandpa should stay, he says. Not because we owe him anything, but because he's finally acting like he wants to be part of this family instead of just visiting it. Looking around our dinner table that evening, 5 children, Rebecca, my father, and me, I realize Tyler is right. This odd configuration works because everyone understands their role and respects the boundaries that keep us functional. My father will never fully redeem himself for his failures during our family crisis, but he's learning to be useful rather than just present. Rebecca will always carry responsibility for the addiction that created chaos, but she's proven that people can change when they're committed to doing the work. And I've learned that being the adult who saves the family doesn't require perfection. It just requires showing up consistently and putting children's needs ahead of your own comfort. Sometimes the family you end up with looks nothing like the family you started with. Sometimes that's exactly what everyone needed. 3 years after taking guardianship of Rebecca's children, I receive a phone call that forces me to confront the difference between justice and revenge. The state parole board is reviewing Rebecca's case for early release based on her exemplary behavior and completion of advanced addiction treatment programs. She could be out in 6 months instead of serving her full sentence, her parole officer explains during our phone conversation. Her counselors believe she's genuinely rehabilitated, and her children appear to be thriving in stable placement. These factors support early release consideration. I look across my kitchen at those children, now thoroughly integrated into our family ecosystem. Tyler is 18 and has been accepted to State University with partial scholarships. Madison is 15 and serves on the student council while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. Sam is 10 and plays in a community basketball league where his teammates include Jake and several neighborhood kids who've become extended family. Rebecca's early release shouldn't change anything about our daily lives, but something about the timing feels significant. She's proven herself through years of consistent behavior, regular visits, and genuine respect for the boundaries I established. The question now is whether our family can handle the transition from visiting mom to mom who lives nearby. What does early release mean practically? I ask the parole officer. Halfway house placement for 6 months, then independent living with continued supervision. She'll be required to maintain employment, attend regular meetings, and submit to random drug testing for the remainder of her original sentence. That evening, I call a family meeting to discuss Rebecca's potential early release. These children have the right to understand changes that affect their lives, even when they're too young to make legal decisions about them. Tyler's response demonstrates the analytical thinking that will serve him well in college. Will this change where we live or go to school? No changes to your living situation, I assure him. This house is your permanent home regardless of what happens with your mother's release. Madison, always focused on emotional undercurrents, asks the more complex question. Does this mean she'll want us to live with her again? We've already discussed that. She understands that you're settled here, and she's not interested in disrupting your stability. Sam, with 10-year-old directness, cuts to his primary concern. Will I still get to live here with Jake and Emma? Yes, buddy. Nothing about your daily life changes. The conversation that follows reveals how much these children have matured through their experiences. They discuss Rebecca's progress with the kind of measured optimism that comes from having adults who actually follow through on their commitments. She's been different, Madison acknowledges, more like a real mom when she visits. She remembers things we tell her, Tyler adds, and she doesn't make promises she can't keep. 6 months later, Rebecca's early release is approved, and she moves into a halfway house 20 minutes from our neighborhood. The transition period goes more smoothly than anyone expected, mainly because everyone involved has realistic expectations about roles and boundaries. Rebecca finds work at a local restaurant where her manager knows about her background and supports her continued recovery. She rents a small apartment after completing the halfway house program, and gradually, a new kind of normal develops for our extended family. Sunday dinners become regular events where Rebecca, my father, and all 5 children gather around our dining room table for conversations that range from homework complaints to college planning to teenage relationship drama. It's chaotic and loud and occasionally contentious, but it's also genuine in ways our original family never achieved. You know what's weird? Emma says during one of these dinners, now 14 and increasingly thoughtful about family dynamics. This is the first time all of us have been happy at the same time. She's right. Tyler is thriving in his senior year and excited about college. Madison's artwork continues to win recognition and scholarships. Jake has discovered a passion for engineering that keeps him busy with robotics competitions. Emma plays varsity soccer and maintains honor roll grades. Sam treats this complicated family structure as completely normal and perfectly wonderful. Rebecca attends parent-teacher conferences, helps with homework, and provides transportation to various activities without disrupting the primary relationships these children have with me. She's found her place as an involved parent who supports rather than competes with the person who provided stability during her absence. My father, now living independently again, but remaining a regular presence in our lives, has learned to contribute meaningfully rather than just existing on the periphery. He helps with yard work, attends school events, and provides the kind of grandfather presence that enriches children's lives without creating complications. One evening, while cleaning up after another chaotic family dinner, Rebecca approaches me with a conversation I've been expecting. I want to thank you, she says simply, not just for taking care of my children, but for giving me the chance to earn back their trust gradually instead of demanding immediate forgiveness. You did the work, I tell her. I just provided consistency while you figured out how to be their mother again. You saved my family. Even when I couldn't save myself, you made sure my children had what they needed to grow up healthy and secure. It's the kind of acknowledgement that would have meant everything to me 3 years ago when I was angry and exhausted and overwhelmed by sudden responsibility for 5 traumatized children. Now it's simply a statement of fact rather than a debt that needs repaying. They're remarkable kids, I say, watching through the kitchen window as Tyler helps Sam with batting practice while the others cheer from the porch. They deserved adults who would fight for them. And they got exactly that in you. Looking at our unconventional, complicated, thoroughly functional family, I realize that sometimes the best outcome isn't justice or revenge or even forgiveness. Sometimes it's just creating something better from the pieces left behind after other people's poor choices have done their worst damage. My children, all 5 of them, are safe, loved, and building futures that reflect their potential rather than their past trauma. Rebecca has earned back her place in their lives through consistent effort rather than legal entitlement. My father has learned to contribute positively rather than just avoid conflict. And I've discovered that the family you fight for can be stronger and more genuine than the family you start with, especially when everyone involved understands the difference between what they deserve and what they've earned. Sometimes that's the best revenge of all, building something so much better that the people who tried to destroy it can only stand back and admire what they could have had if they'd made different choices. 5 years after waking up from my coma to discover my life had been dismantled, I stand in my kitchen preparing Sunday dinner for what has become our traditional family gathering. The dining room table, extended to its maximum length, accommodates 9 people these days. Jake and Emma, now 16 and full of opinions about everything. Tyler, home from college for spring break and full of stories about social work internships. Madison, now 17 and applying to art schools with portfolios that make professors take notice. Sam, now 12 and convinced he'll be a professional baseball player. Rebecca, 3 years sober and working as the addiction counselor. My father, who's learned the difference between being present and being helpful, and occasionally friends and neighbors who've become chosen family. Looking around this noisy, complicated, thoroughly unconventional household, I sometimes marvel at how different our lives look compared to what I could have imagined during those dark months in the hospital. Tyler graduates from college in 2 months with a degree in social work and a job offer from the same county agency that placed him in foster care. "I want to help kids like us," he told me during his last visit, his voice carrying the kind of purpose that comes from transforming personal trauma into professional mission. Kids who need adults to fight for them instead of giving up when things get complicated. Madison has been accepted to 3 prestigious art programs and will study graphic design with a focus on social justice campaigns. Her latest series, titled Found Family, depicts the various configurations of chosen families she's observed in our neighborhood. Single parents, blended families, multi-generational households, families built through foster care and adoption rather than just biology. Jake and Emma, now 16 and navigating the particular complications of being twins with different interests and social groups, serve as unofficial mentors to younger children in our extended network. They remember what it felt like to lose everything familiar, and they use that experience to help other kids who find themselves in temporary or unstable situations. Sam treats this complicated family structure as completely normal and perfectly wonderful. He plays Little League baseball with enthusiasm that makes up for any lack of natural talent, maintains solid grades without much drama, and considers himself the luckiest kid in his class because he has the most interesting family story for school projects about family heritage. Rebecca, now 4 years sober and working as a certified addiction counselor, has built a life that balances her recovery needs with genuine parenting responsibilities. She attends AA meetings twice weekly, maintains regular therapy sessions, and has developed the kind of honest relationship with her children that allows for authentic conversation about addiction, recovery, and family rebuilding. "You know what I'm most grateful for?" she says during one of our recent Sunday dinners, looking around the table at children who've learned to trust her again through years of consistent behavior. "That you let me earn back their love instead of demanding it as a right." My father, now 75 and slowing down but still mentally sharp, has become the kind of grandfather he never was as a parent. He helps with homework, attends school events, provides transportation when needed, and offers wisdom gained through years of reflecting on his own parenting failures. "I was a coward when you were children," he told Rebecca and me during a rare moment of family honesty. "I avoided conflict instead of protecting you from your mother's worst impulses. I can't undo that damage, but I can try to be better for these grandchildren." The foster children who've passed through our home over the years stay in touch. Christmas cards, graduation invitations, wedding announcements from young adults who started as traumatized children needing temporary safety. Our refrigerator looks like a gallery of human resilience, covered with photos and achievements from dozens of young people who've moved through our lives. "Mom!" Emma calls from the dining room where she's setting the table for tonight's dinner. "Can Maria and her foster parents come to dinner next week?" She wants them to meet everyone. Maria, one of our former foster placements, is now 18 and aging out of the system. She's maintained contact with our family and considers us part of her support network as she transitions to independent living. Her current foster parents are wonderful people who understand the value of maintaining connections with previous placements. "Of course," I reply, mentally calculating how many people that brings our dinner count to. "We'll need to use the picnic table on the porch, too." This is what success looks like, I realize. Not the absence of problems or trauma, but the creation of a space where people can heal and grow and contribute to each other's well-being. Not perfection, but resilience. Not traditional family structures, but intentional love expressed through daily choices to show up for each other. During cleanup after dinner, I find myself alone in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and a profound sense of gratitude for the unexpected directions life can take. 5 years ago, I woke up from a coma to discover that my mother had sold my children and stolen my money while I was unconscious and helpless. The betrayal felt complete and devastating at the time. My husband was dead. My children were in foster care. My savings were gone. My house was being sold. Everything I thought I could count on had been dismantled by the person I trusted most to protect what mattered. But in rebuilding from that devastation, I discovered capabilities I didn't know I possessed. I found strength in advocating for vulnerable children. I learned that families can be chosen and created rather than just inherited. I developed patience for chaos and mess, and the beautiful complications that come with loving people who need time and safety to heal. The path from betrayal to this kitchen, from loss to this abundance, from isolation to this community, couldn't have been planned or predicted. It required surviving betrayal and choosing resilience. It required holding people accountable for their choices without allowing those choices to poison my own future. Most importantly, it required understanding that being a victim of someone else's terrible decisions doesn't have to define the rest of your story. You get to decide what comes next, even when the options available aren't the ones you would have chosen. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in unexpected places and building families from love instead of just legal obligations. Looking through the kitchen window at our backyard where Tyler is teaching Sam to throw a curveball while the others cheer from the porch, I feel the deep satisfaction that comes from building something meaningful from broken pieces. This is my life now. Chaotic, complicated, full of people who need me and people I need in return. It's not the life I planned, but it's exactly the life I was meant to live. My mother thought she was taking everything from me when she sold my children and stole my money. Instead, she gave me the opportunity to discover exactly how much I was capable of when everything I thought I could depend on disappeared. Turns out I was capable of quite a lot. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new joys, new opportunities to show up for the people who matter most. Tonight, I'm content to sit in this peaceful moment, grateful for second chances and the courage to take them, surrounded by the family I fought for and won. And somewhere in a prison cemetery, my mother rests knowing that her children's children are safe and loved and building lives that reflect the values she failed to demonstrate. Sometimes that has to be enough justice for everyone involved.